Hi friends, today I am going to review the book, Knowledge Management, Classic and Contemporary Works, by Daryl Morey, Mark Maybury and Bhavani Thuraisingham. Strategy. In knowledge management, strategy means a plan, with clear metrics, that is designed to achieve a goal. Strategy does not determine whether the goal is worth achieving or not. The vision and purpose of the organization determine that. Strategy merely lays out a path to the goal. Confusing strategy and vision can blur the focus and weaken the discipline of your organization. Therefore, your organization's knowledge management strategy must recognize the importance and nature of leadership, including these facts. 1. Leadership belongs to the organization. 1. It is not the peculiar province of executives. 2. Leadership is an organization's ability to change, create, and work more knowledgeably. 3. Knowledge is the ability to act and have an effect. 4. Leaders make change possible by enabling the organization to grow in knowledge. There is growing recognition among executives today that intellectual capital, that is, the sum total of a firm's skills, knowledge, and experience, is critical to sustaining competitiveness, performance, and shareholder value. Knowledge management does not move in a straight line. Knowledge grows organically. Technology may be neat, orderly, and fast, but progress in knowledge is chaotic, messy, and slow. One must distinguish knowledge from data. Data is merely an aggregation of facts and observations. Knowledge is the ability to do something worthwhile with data. Knowledge management is not about technology. Some say that knowledge management is just another fad, another buzzword in the dictionary of business jargon. In fact, knowledge management has proven itself in the competitive arena. It is now almost beyond question that 1. Stock prices take account of the value of a corporation's intellectual capital. 2. Real-world examples show the competitive value of knowledge management. 3. Knowledge management is an evolutionary step in the growth of business processes. In today's business environment, inability to respond quickly to the marketplace is a well-recognized form of corporate suicide. Knowledge management has two important functions. The first is to make existing knowledge more widely available to the organization. The second is to make it possible to create valuable new knowledge. Those who must make sure both of these functions happen smoothly recognize that knowledge management is about coaxing, persuading, and encouraging human beings to share something that they can easily choose not to share. No one can take knowledge from someone else, but people can give it. Most organizations do not have a culture that encourages people to share their knowledge, yet sharing is indispensable. Intellectual capital, after all, is a composition of human capital, social capital, and structural capital. To take each in turn. 1. Human capital, all of your employees' skills, know-how, memories, and such. 2. Structural capital, all the patents, copyrights, rules, procedures, and documentation that belong to your organization. 3. Social capital, all the trust-based relationships that enable knowledge sharing. The U.S. Army has learned that the more hectic the operation, the greater the imperative for an organized system for collecting lessons learned. Knowledge management means putting in place and maintaining policies, tools, and venues that foster the growth and dissemination of knowledge. The various recognized approaches to developing a knowledge management strategy more or less agree that 1. Before you can discuss knowledge management, you must define your terms. 2. Knowledge management is about action, creation, and value. 3. The most effective approaches to knowledge management blend into rather than break away from established practices and procedures. 4. People, not processes, create and share knowledge. 5. Implementation depends on measurement. 6. You will probably have to change your organizational culture to reap lasting benefits from knowledge management. Process. Knowledge management is not about information technology. It is almost impossible to say this too often. Software and IT marketers have muddied the waters by promoting their technology solutions as knowledge management solutions. Knowledge is human, not technological. Human beings create knowledge individually, but they share and learn knowledge socially. This implies that an organization which is interested in nurturing the growth and sharing of knowledge must develop processes that encourage individuals to create knowledge and that also encourage social groups to share knowledge. Knowledge management has to foster the interplay between content and context. Information technology can make it easier for people to communicate and share knowledge, but when all is said and done, knowledge sharing is personal and depends on relationships. Notice how often people meet in corridors and have animated conversations. Corridors are a context for social exchange. The trick to innovation is to match need with solution. Context supersedes and includes content. People are not computers. They do not store data. Instead, they remember contexts. If you ask someone about the details of a wedding ritual, you may get a blank stare. But if you ask the same person about his or her wedding, you will probably get an animated, disorderly recollection that includes an account of the wedding ritual. People remember experiences and contexts, rather than facts. Managers in several organizations have noted that when they were evaluated solely on short-term financial performance, they often found it difficult to sustain investments to enhance the capability of their people, systems, and organizational processes. Of course, this presents a challenge to anyone who hopes to capture knowledge. Data is rather easy to record and store, but contexts are not. The emphasis in recent years has fallen, understandably but illogically, precisely on the less important dimension of knowledge, data. In order to redress the balance and put context in its proper place, organizations need to develop systems to collect and preserve context. Such systems should be understandable, easy to use, and as human as possible. New leadership roles require new leadership skills. Western, especially Cartesian, philosophy has molded most theories of knowledge management. They are commonly dualistic, dividing the subject and object, knower and known, into two units. This philosophy, for example, finds expression in the notion of organizations that gather information from outside and then process it internally. While not entirely wrong, this way of looking at knowledge has distinct shortcomings. It cannot account for innovation. That knowledge has a commercial value is not contested. Innovation is not a matter of gathering and processing information. Innovation emerges from the interplay of tacit and explicit knowledge. Tacit knowledge, personal, closely related to context, difficult to write down or codify, is locked away in human brains. Explicit knowledge, by contrast, finds its way into documents, databases, and other easily accessible media. Tacit and explicit knowledge are complementary, not contradictory. New products and services never enter a vacuum. Tacit knowledge is the kind of knowledge transferred during apprenticeships or on-the-job training programs. Learning tacit knowledge depends on experience and imitation. Metrics. It is impossible to know whether knowledge management is effective unless you measure it. Without metrics, knowledge management is an occult art. However, knowledge is impossible to measure or manage directly since it is, by nature, intangible and personal. The best you can hope to do is to measure and manage the environment and the people that foster, preserve, create, and share knowledge. The balanced scorecard is one of the classic approaches to knowledge management. This approach defines 4 categories or perspectives, including learning and growth, where the most important drivers are: 1. Employee competencies. 2. Information systems. 3. Motivation, empowerment, and alignment. Corporations need to retrain and equip employees to move every organization toward meeting its objectives. Yet, most corporations measure employees only on satisfaction, retention, and productivity. These metrics, which are useful and do have their place, more or less assume that satisfaction drives retention and productivity. Often, they do not address retraining. Today, organizations that are undergoing rapid change or facing radically new challenges and environments sometimes add reskilling measures to their balanced scorecards, so they can track their progress in reaching this critically important objective. Obviously, organizations need information systems. Without them, process improvements, redesign, re-engineering, and such systems as total quality management, TQM, are impossible. Among the useful measurements of information system capability are: 1. Cycle time. 2. Availability of cost information. 3. Availability of customer information. Metrics that assess motivation, alignment, and empowerment are intended to determine whether employees want to contribute, are able to contribute, and do contribute. Although it's impossible to measure these soft qualities directly, organizations can measure outcomes and make inferences accordingly. Among the metrics used are: 1. Suggestions per capita. 2. Proportion of suggestions implemented. 3. Half-life metric, or the time taken to achieve a 50% improvement in a process. 4. Extent to which individual and unit goals reflect organizational goals. 5. Team performance measures. Knowledge is a precious resource that requires careful management, but a lot of confusion exists about the nature of knowledge and knowledge management. Knowledge is not technology or data, but rather is the ability to act and achieve results. A strategy for knowledge management must have a clear and measurable goal. The goal should include steps to encourage both knowledge creation and knowledge sharing. To be effective, this strategy must take into account the fact that there are at least two categories of knowledge: tacit and explicit. Tacit knowledge is experiential. Explicit knowledge is, to use a colloquialism, book learning. Innovation comes from the interaction of these two kinds of knowledge. Knowledge creation is individual, but learning is social, so a knowledge management strategy must create an environment where individuals have the freedom and incentive to create knowledge, and the context in which to share it. Takeaways. 1. Knowledge management leadership must be purposeful and must not confuse strategy with vision. 2. Knowledge is human, not mechanical. 2. Every human has knowledge. Every worker is a knowledge worker. 3. Humans can decide to share their knowledge or not share it. 4. Knowledge management is not a technological discipline. 5. Knowledge progress is chaotic and slow. 6. Data is just a collection of facts. Knowledge is the capacity to use data to take meaningful action. 7. Intellectual capital is composed of human capital, social capital, and structural capital. 8. Innovation requires both explicit, learning-based knowledge and tacit knowledge, which is experiential, and is not based on book learning. 9. People create knowledge individually but learn it socially. 10. Without metrics, knowledge management is muddy metaphysics. 10. Measurement is crucial.